Man, after a week of such phenomenal releases, I was kind of hoping for a palate cleanser, something lighthearted, fun, and above all, entertaining. And let me just say, this week of new music did not provide that at all, and in fact it was horrible. I keep telling myself this whenever we get a somewhat substantial amount of mediocre releases, that this is the worst release week by far. And yeah, it would get kinda old every time I say that. But this week, the day of August 27th, 2021, deserves that title. Frankly, I don't remember a week this year where so many awful releases came at the same time. Screw that. I can't remember the last time in the past 5 years where we got this many multiple releases that were this bad. Nelly's awful take on country, and Tyler Hubbard continues to prove how awful of a rapper he is. We also got a King Calloway EP, Who the Frick Even Cares, and another double album by Trace Adkins. All of these are really bad records, and the more I thought about turning this video into a multi-review just to find the worst release felt kinda pointless. I would just keep repeating myself with my frustrations and issues with all these projects. But thank the Lord we got Niko Moon. Now, I know how the country community feels about Niko Moon. Everyone loves to take a giant crap on the dude because he makes blatant hip-hop records with the most minimal country twang and sings horribly on them. And does he deserve that? Oh yes, definitely. So when I listened to Good Time by Niko Moon, I really didn't have much expectations. Well, that's not really true. I expected this to be the worst country album of the year, bar none. And it pretty much was. But let me tell you something. I had a really good time with Niko Moon's Good Time. Like, yes, it's a piece of garbage, but I legit haven't had this much fun listening to an album since Folklore. Not because the album was catchy or fire, but the fact that this album is such a complete and utter joke that I couldn't stop laughing at how horrendous it was. For a little bit, I was also just considering doing a rant and disguising it as a review for the Trace Adkins record, but I wasn't prepared for this. One of the most ironically enjoyable bad pieces of art in modern culture. It honestly felt self-aware of its awfulness at times. When I'm dealing with something I know is really bad, I shift from having it try to be good and redeem itself to just embrace the cringe and make something ironically enjoyable. And this album provided that with some of the most laughably put together music I've seen since The Owl. The album literally opens up saying there will be no sad songs on this record. Nothing serious. Saying if you want something deep and mature, you're in the wrong place. Practically saying this album isn't going to be good. Seriously, when was the last time an album was this open on how, yeah, this will not be a good listen. This is your only warning. Turn back before it's too late. It just makes the campiness of this record soar to insanely enjoyable highs. And I love how he literally self-advertises his one and only hit song Good Time in this track. Legit, that made me laugh harder than anything on the K is Silent. You know what? That doesn't say enough. It was funnier than all of the jokes on Inside. And for the rest of the album, it pretty much holds up that promise in providing the most lazily put together music of the entire year. And what sets it apart from the other pieces of garbage is that it doesn't try to be serious. It's not like on records like Ruthless by Gary Allan or Telling All My Secrets by Mitchell Tenpenny that take everything they are saying seriously, making for something that stinks and is for the most part intolerable. Here, Niko is basically a sloth of an artist. He takes nothing he says seriously, and his music never relents on the positivity, which is comedy gold. I've always said the best comedies are the ones where the humor was never intentional, but I never justified the cheap performances of Weeknd's look a little different these days, and I'm certainly not going to start now. For the most part, every song felt like it was built by a middle schooler. It takes some of the most shallowest beats you can find in pop and hip hop and plays them over the most monotonous instrumentals, putting in the most minimal effort to sound country. And it just sounds so disjointed, but like I said, it's to a point where you can't really hate what Niko was doing. In terms of writing, quality is non-existent. Everything feels so moronic and predictable. It legit sounds like a white dude with no flow is trying to rap. And in fact it is. Niko doesn't care so much that he fully rips off the premise of Tennessee Whiskey for his song Last Call. Unfortunately, we do have one song that is attempting to be competent, and despite being pretty tolerable, I legit don't like the fact this song is on the record. It acts as such a tonal killer to such a great cringe comedy. But to be fair, for this song, he's clearly ripping off some of it. A chunk of this record is just ripping off much better and successful country songs. Niko gives probably the worst vocal performance of 2021. It's to a point where you can kinda sense he doesn't want to be here, and it's through his lackluster performance they have to rely on filtering his voice so much. They do it so much that when he's not relying on it, it just sounds so off. Instrumentally, like previously mentioned, it's constantly relying on these cheap licks through the acoustics, and actual percussion is practically non-existent, making it all sound so artificial and uninspired. It was to a point where I genuinely did not ask for a single hint of quality instrumentals because it was embracing the lack of clarity so darn much. Now you're probably wondering which album I find worst, Weekends by Brett Young or Good Time? Oh, Good Time is a much worse album, but I had such a good time with this record that I cannot justifiably give it that 1 out of 10 it ever so deserves. Like, objectively speaking, yeah, this is a piece of garbage, but for someone who's not really enjoyed a lot of country music content this year, I had such a blast, and I'm gonna revisit this album a lot for how bad it is. Compare that to an album that wants to take all of its cheap value seriously and tries to pass it off as actual quality. It's horrible records like Weekends and Ruthless that make for such an enjoyable listen. Rating wise, I'm feeling a very light 3 out of 10 on Good Time by Niko Moon. If you want to laugh hard, I highly recommend this record.